my podcast. So this is the first episode of the game. I'm going to list out, my objectives for this podcast, what I want to get across, what I want to deliver to people. First thing, my name, Nash Bonus. Huge fan of social dynamics, big nerd, in other words, social dynamics. So that is going to be the theme of the podcast. Social dynamics and the applications that it has into different areas of life, how it separates you and is the one key metric that will lead and is guaranteed to make you successful. As you can see by my abnormant, that's not a word, amounts of success. So, you can see my beautiful Notion here. This will be our little notes for today, so you can see which area we're up to. As well, actually, I will be going through the name. What does the name mean? How is that connected to social dynamics? How is that a good name for a podcast? Well, it's a great name for a podcast because I said so, and of course other reasons. But yes, the name, the reason. So, why is it called the game? What's my reasoning behind it? Well, my one key point that I want to drive home at all with the point of the podcast is this. So, you either know the rules of the game and play the game, or you don't know the rules and play the game. There is no two ways about it. The game exists. We all play it each and every day amongst our peers and all of those around us. We are all in some aspect competing. But I guess let's define the game as well. So there's lots of different, key areas in life, or different people will call it different things, right? So overall though, the game is how we all interact, how we the dynamics behind our social interactions. So, for example, you will see somebody's standing a certain way, and you'll think maybe more or less of them due to that, say, posture, smile, or however it is that they're presenting themselves. However, he can say, none of that matters, or they can say, rather, whoever, none of this social dynamic stuff matters, I'm just going to be me. And you can do that, but you're still playing the game. Do you understand? So, you can see in life when somebody will say something. A great example of this, right, is, say, a guy of lesser status says something to a girl, and then some guy of higher status says the exact same thing to a girl and gets a better result than the guy of lower status. Why is that? What determines status? Why does status matter? I think it's a crazy subject, and one that's extremely interesting. You'll see many books on it that will cover different areas of it, one of my favorites right now. It's called Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. Absolute G of a book. Maybe one day we'll get him on. Maybe. Let's see. But the point of that one is, right, the main, I guess, point that Pitch Anything drives home is that, regardless of your pitch and what you're actually pitching, it's how you pitch it that matters most. So, for example, and put yourself in this situation as well. So, say somebody's trying to sell your product, right? And at the end of selling your product, they're like, oh, it's does this. Say they're selling your car. Oh, it's fast, reliable, sexy, whatever area they're trying to appeal to you in, right? They say at the end, so what do you think? And then think, what if they said, well, I've got a couple minutes left. We're going to get something going. I'm going to head out. You basically make them pick the next thing for you, in a sense. In a way. But I also wanted to do my raps while doing this podcast as well. So I'm doing my raps now. But yes, so, social dynamics matter, right? How do you present yourself? How do you stand if you are approaching a girl, for example, and you want to find a significant other, a partner, whatever, right? Why is it that one person will say something a certain way and another person will say it the exact same way and get different results? What are those metrics that make those differences? Because there's clearly a difference there because the response is the same, right? You can't think of the input solely as the words, right? And I think that's the way a lot of people like to think nowadays in terms of communication. The input of communication is to, what the other person receives, right? It's not just your words, right? At a very basic level, it's your words, how you say those words, speed. Maybe they didn't understand you. Maybe you spoke too fast. Maybe they didn't understand your accent. That's one very basic level, right? But then the next level, what is that level, right? Well, tonality is important, right? Obviously, there's the extension of how you say things, but what is the emphasis of your words on? Right? Can you understand them better as a person before talking to them and trying to understand to a certain level what they'll gravitate more towards, right, in speaking to them, right? There is also the aspect in communication of obviously body language, right? Everyone knows how important body language is, but why, right? Actually, we'll get into why in a different episode. All of these have a why, but this is more going to ping interest, right? And basically state things that you're aware of, but you don't really know why or how or things like that. So we'll get into why at a later date, I think. But body posture, right? We know that if somebody sits up more like this, they're going to appear more confident, right? If I'm standing at a table, not sitting at a table with someone, and I'm hunched over, or whatever the fuck, right? I'm going to appear lesser, right? Because I'm, lots of people say, shrinking myself down. And I would be in that scenario, right? To some extent, you're pinging to the group that you think you're less than them, right? Why else would you be trying to be smaller. Right, everyone knows confidence is important, right? Confidence is extremely important, right? Why would we want to be around people that aren't self-assured, right? So to some extent, we all want to be around the same type of person, right? Yes, there'll be people that have the same sort of values. There's spans of different people, right? But in every category, right, no matter the type of person, what are the attributes of a successful person? So a rock star or a stupidly successful businessman. There's the same characteristics that you'll see. And yeah, they're not complete opposites, but they're not the same by any means or any stretch of the imagination. And people that will look up to one definitely aren't going to look up to the other. But why do they have the same traits? Right? And a lot of those are to do with leadership and stuff like that, right? It's to leadership skill sets, confidence, all of those things, right? You can't really be to some certain level of success or even consciousness, right? They're on a different level of consciousness to some extent because they understand things that a lot of other people do not. My next point is, right, you either know the rules and play the game or you don't know the rules and play the game, right? But you'll see some people, they'll understand some of the things that we've spoken about and they will try and change the rules of the game on some social level, right? There'll be people trying to get people to think a different way or to change a different way. But in reality, the most powerful mindset that you could possibly have, right, is just accepting that these are the rules to some extent, right? That we function the way that we currently function. We are not perfect, but why would you try and change that? To some extent, it's like having a car with a problem and they're like, oh, well, the car won't start. Well, let's rip out the whole engine and put in a different engine. Because I don't want to understand that. It just doesn't work, right? So the types of people that you see trying to change the way other people are, they're on any political realm, right, left or right, they're the ones people point to be idiots, right? So we can start with the right, since I said right. They'll make the argument, oh, God wouldn't make gay people because it's unnatural, right? Well, they're that way for whatever reason. It's better to accept it than to just fight it. It's not really affecting you to whatever extent. But then you'll also hear a million other people on the planet try and say that some people are disadvantaged and it will affect these categories, right? Confidence, their drive, right? At the end of the day, I'm going to hire somebody who appears more confident. I don't really care where they came from, who they are, what color their skin is, any of that stuff, right? I just want somebody who's going to make my life easier. And what's it to me who or what they are, right? It's not that important. And, obviously people exist out there that are like that. But isn't it a better mindset to just accept that people are like that? Irrespective of if you agree or not. There's not much benefit in trying to change people's way of thinking. And this is just besides the point of changing the rules of the game. But there's not much benefit to trying to change people's way of thinking. Wouldn't it be better to just be successful in a certain way of thinking and move forward and be better and be greater and be stronger? And prove to that point that you're right through proxy of your success? I would say so. If you're too busy trying to change other people's minds, how are you going to prove that you're right? The discussion's generally not going to prove it. It's results, right? And what do people point to in debates? Facts, results, right? So I think even if there's, unless you're completely wrong, right, and facts completely disprove that, well, even if you don't agree with those facts, which is a interesting way to think of things, because facts are obviously factual and undisputable, but, you can disagree with somebody's way of thinking. Debating them is not going to change anything. Do you have the same goal as this person? Yes, no? Okay. Well, if both of your goals are to be successful and rich and whatever, well, do it. Show them. Teach them that they're wrong. But yeah, like, to the point of trying to change the rules to the game, I was talking to somebody at a blockchain event the other day, and they were saying that to some level you got to give people a chance. And it's like, well, no. Like, yes, obviously, but if I have a choice to give one person a chance, and I can choose between 5 people, or just 2 people, let's just say 2 people, and one person appears more confident, for reasons we'll discuss, right? The game is areas to look more confident. The game is essentially a social hierarchy, right? Status, all of these things, right? That's what we're going to talk about. But we are wired to trust people that appear more confident, and you could make the argument that that's an incorrect, that's a bad wiring. Sure, you could make that point. Or that it's not going to lead to success. You could make that point. But we're wired that way. So you may as well get confident. You may as well have the greatest chance of success out of anyone on the planet. Right? If you walk into a bike store, right, follow me for a second. If you walk into a bike store and you want to buy a bike, you don't know much about bikes, but you want to buy one, that's what you know. And you go in and they say, oh, what are you looking for? You go, oh, just a bike. They go, oh, and you show you some bikes. They don't really drill in and show some level of confidence, right? They could ask, what type of bike are you looking for, right? Or what's the interest in bikes? Are you a rider, or whatever term it is bikers use to be bikers, right? And drilling into that interest and showing a level of professionalism, right? You want your doctor to be a professional. You wouldn't trust a non-professional to give you advice because to some extent this person is giving you advice on what bike to buy, even though you are buying a bike off them. You are looking to them for a level of expertise, and, you know, we trust people with a level of expertise, right? So yeah, like, that's this point. So, waste of time trying to change the rules of the game. Now, EQ and IQ. So, EQ and IQ. Huge structures, if that's the right word. For those who don't know, obviously IQ is your general intelligence, whatever it stands for, and then EQ is your social intelligence, or your emotional awareness, and stuff like that. Obviously, today, well, I guess, you know, throughout generations, traditionally, men have higher IQ, women have higher EQ. Though I would like to make the argument that nowadays, above all else, which one of these is going to lead you to more success? And I think by the title of the podcast, you know my opinion, but emotional intelligence, social awareness, understanding how people communicate and what's going to best give you the ability to communicate among other people. Right, so nowadays, and I guess this is going to dip into our next one, AI and EQ. Let's just start with IQ, actually. AI and IQ. IQ is abundant nowadays, an absolute abundance. There are smart people everywhere. Yes, there's idiots everywhere, but to some extent, you know, nowadays there's supposedly the smartest people have ever been, right? And obviously there's lots of issues in society and things like that, but, you know, IQ is in absolute abundance. However, with the uprising of AI and the increase and innovations that are coming in AI, right, IQ is going to become less special, right? And there's areas of IQ and EQ that intersect, and obviously you can't have zero IQ and be completely high in EQ. You're going to be quite useless. There's going to be a level of, you know, of a level of both of them that's going to be perfect. But the point I'd like to make is which one is more important, not that one is not important, because obviously being not intelligent is not favourable by any means, but being socially inept is not either, right? And acting as if our ways of communicating with one another is not important to some level to get what we want, and to some level help others, right? And the point with AI and IQ, well, there's going to be no one on the planet more smart than an AI, right? Because to some extent, you know, with LLMs, you know, large language models, they are everyone, right? They've scraped everyone's information into somewhat a congruent of people, their thoughts, and how things work. There is not one person in existence ever that currently knows more than ChatGPT or Google or any search engine, right? And any search engine and the results on them are now into AI large language models, and you can now pull them with any prompt ever. So, what is your hope in trying to be more intelligent? Well, there's a level of intelligence that will always serve you, right? Not striving to be some level of intelligence is bound to end in unfortunate futures. However, I'd say if your main goal was to be the smartest person on the planet, or to be extremely smart, extremely intelligent, then you're wasting your time. If it is to be successful in your most amount of money, it depends on your goals, right? If you want to make some scientific discovery, then it doesn't matter what EQ is. It really depends on your goals. If it is to be socially successful in all areas of your life, right? That's to say, from a love perspective, from a friendship perspective, business perspective, right? You've got plenty of money, friends, strong connections, right? All these things, do they stem from IQ? Or are these all other people? Right. I'd say that EQ is a quantifier of your IQ. So if you have no EQ, this is in social interactions as well, I will state. If you have zero EQ, and it's obviously a hard thing to measure, well, times that by your 120 IQ, and that's how many friends that you have. That's not to say that people with EQ have lots of friends, but I think you kind of get what I mean, how you're going to be successful socially and things like that. But my next point, AI and EQ. Right, what's the one hedge that you can bet against AI? What's the one thing that you can see throughout all of history? What's the one bet that you can make through all of humanity up until this point? With absolute 100% success throughout the ages. It is that people trust people. And that's not to say that people wouldn't trust AI at some point in the future. But it is to say that throughout all of humanity, people have looked to one another for trust. And we were wired for a certain way of success between one another. We want to trust people around us. There's not one person out there today that's well, maybe there is, but very unlikely. That there's a person out there saying, I really don't want anyone in my life that I could possibly trust. I don't want that to happen. Right? Extremely unlikely. And what does that point mean? Right? The point I'm making is that no matter how good AI gets, there's one thing AI can't do. Well, by definition, there's one thing AI can't do. They could mimic it, of course, but one thing they can't do. AI can't be human. Right? And EQ is how well you communicate among your peers. How well it is that you get across information, how likable you are to some extent. Obviously, likability is it's objective to some extent, right? You can't be liked by everyone, and obviously striving to do that's going to lead you to a life of unhappiness, right? But you generally know what it is that's going to make you likable to some extent. Right? So, would it not be better as a hedge think about it, right? AI is going to be doing everything when it comes to relationships between one another. Right? Just because it's more efficient and cheaper does not mean it's better. Think about when they outsourced support overseas. What was people's complaint? well, I'm not talking to somebody that I'm used to talking to. Right? They're talking to somebody who doesn't feel the same as them. And yes, AI can definitely mimic that, but there'll always be something off. They'll always prefer talking to another person over an AI. We may get to some point in life where it's easier to accept that we can't, and that's a debate to be had. But I think we can even say now, if AI was of the equal level as humans in terms of communicating, and you had the option between talking to a person and an AI to, I don't know, buy something, right? You want to be able to trust someone. You can't trust AI to some extent. There will always be some level of, oh, yeah, that's, you want some form of proof, right? Everyone knows that AI hallucinates to some extent on information, and I don't think we'll get to a level of AI that we can trust 100%. And obviously there's no people that we can trust 100%, but when somebody's selling you something, they're responsible to some extent for what they're telling you, and you know that inherently. Right? They're providing their expertise, they're guiding you, they're giving you advice. At any point in the future, you can go back to that person, have a genuine interaction with them and say, hey, this didn't work. What do you recommend? And they're going to be going, oh, they're going to take personal responsibility for that fault to some extent. We're always going to prefer to buy off a real person than AI. So the best hedge that you can make in 2023 is to improve your EQ. And that is what this podcast is set to do. Right? Expert EQ advice from all people in the field, right? Whether that be authors, right? I mentioned Oren before, pickup artists, right? Maybe we get Neil Strauss on, title of the podcast here. But anyone, really, it doesn't really matter because it's still an interpersonal conversation that we'll be having. Right? But yeah, that's episode 1 in 30-something minutes. Nice. I'm going to use the ends here to state my goals of this podcast, goals and objectives. Off the top here, for reference, I came up with this idea went through this idea a couple minutes ago prior to this starting. Well, today, I will say. And haven't really set out much, but my goals and objectives are really to educate on the importance of So we want to educate people on the importance of EQ, make people more confident in interpersonal relationships, make people more successful. We want to get on some in the space, whether that be pickup artists, authors, business men. I'm just gonna go CEOs. It says rich people, successful people, right? People that are going to join in and add to this conversation, because, you know, I'd imagine people that listen to this podcast are people that would like to be like that. Right, so that's episode 1. Let me know what you think. And we're going to cut it before I do that.